So we've been talking in this chapter about the blood vessels and how the blood pressure and the resistance are going to come into play, and how your blood pressure is going to be moving and changing throughout the different parts of the body, whether you're in capillaries versus arteries versus veins. But what we're going to look at here is now how that overall regulation is going to take place. We need to make sure that blood flow changes are going to occur at the appropriate time in the correct area, and we need to do it so that we're not losing blood flow to vital organs. So we need to make sure we're maintaining pressure at all the different places that are going to need that. So what we will have during that time is we have what's called vasomotion, which is going to be a rhythmic change in vessel diameter. We will have rhythmic contraction and relaxation of those precapillary sphincters that cause blood flow into the capillary beds, and it occurs in pulses and the constantly changing routes as it does that. At any given time at rest, you only have about 25% of the capillary beds that are actually open. And when demand increases, blood flow has to be carefully regulated to make sure you're not having all the blood only going to one area of the body, and then it cuts off the other parts that are going to also need that blood. Now, looking at this diagram, we can see that we have our normal blood volume and pressure, which is supposed to be our set point here for homeostasis. You can disturb your homeostasis a number of different ways. So you can see that there are chemical changes, you can have the tissue activity that's changing, or physical stress. All of those can cause inadequate local blood flow and blood pressure to a particular area. When that happens, the local blood flow is going to be regulated by adjustments in peripheral resistance, and we're going to keep the cardiac output the same. So the precapillary sphincters are going to be stimulated to dilate or constrict depending on what is happening to alter the blood flow through those capillary beds. Now, in the case of inadequate blood flow, we're going to have the precapillary sphincters open up. And as they open up, you're going to use what we refer to as vasodilators. They cause them to open, which will cause a decrease in the resistance, which means we have an increase in blood flow because they are inversely proportional to each other. Then at that point, that might restore our homeostasis because you have enough blood flow going to that area. If something happens and that is not going to be sufficient to get us back to normal blood volume and pressure, we are going to go beyond what it was just autoregulation. So that autoregulation was going to be just a local response for the capillary beds opening up their precapillary sphincters to allow more blood in. Well, if autoregulation is not enough, then we're going to have central regulation. Central regulation is going to involve both endocrine and neural mechanisms, both of which are going to be used to try to get our blood pressure and blood volume back to the correct spot. These are things that we're going to talk about in more depth later on, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but you will need to know that if autoregulation fails to bring us back to homeostasis, you will have to use both endocrine and neural mechanisms in order to get your blood volume and pressure back to where it's supposed to be. Now, what we're looking at here are going to be major arteries. So this is part of our systemic circuit where we're having oxygen-rich, nutrient-rich blood that is pumped out of the heart, and then you can see going from the heart is going to be continuing to branch to go to all the different parts of the body. So these are major arteries, and you will need to be able to label all of them. Now, on the test, if this is going to be free response, you are not going to be able to see red and blue. So I would tell you whether these were major veins or major arteries that you're going to have to be looking at. So remember, our arteries are taking that oxygen-rich and nutrient-rich blood to the tissues. You're going through capillary exchange, and then the major veins will be taking them all to drain back into the heart. So now these are going to be going in reverse. A lot of these names are going to be very similar to what you saw for the arteries, but they're not all exactly the same. So do make sure that you are noticing which are the veins and doing that practicing of the arteries and the veins. Now, our systemic circuit is going to have some specialized branches within it. Our systemic circuit is going to be taking blood from the left side of the heart that is oxygenated and nutrient-rich, and it's going to deliver that blood to all the different tissues and cells all across the body, and then it's going to bring it back to the right side of the heart. When we're talking about the systemic, we're talking about delivering nutrients. Within that systemic circuit, we have what is referred to as the hepatic portal system. The hepatic portal system is going to be a way that we are going to add nutrients back into the blood before it's going to go to the heart to get pumped through the pulmonary circuit to give it oxygen. So our hepatic portal system allows us to take blood that has already been used, where you have taken up the nutrients by the cells, you've taken up the oxygen by it, and then you're stopping at the digestive system. So the digestive system, of course, you're breaking down your food into its monomers so that we can have our good sugars, amino acids, and lipids that we need. Now, when to break it down within your digestive system, you have to have a way of putting it back in to the blood circulation so it can go to the heart. And that's where our hepatic portal system is going to come into play. Do you notice the structures that I have here that have been highlighted? Those you will need to be able to label. But hepatic is just going to be the root word that means liver. Our liver is the one that's responsible for actually metabolizing your nutrients. It's going to make them ready to be used. So once you digest it and you break it down into the simplest forms, then you're going to need to metabolize it by the liver so it's ready to actually be used by your cell. So that means food came into your stomach mashed it up really well, and then it sends it into your small intestine. Your small intestine is doing the majority of your chemical digestion and breaking them down into their smallest components. So when your small intestine is doing that, then we are going to absorb the good nutrients into the blood vessels here. And so you can see these blood vessels, which are now taking that nutrient and bringing it upward. So they're going to be draining upward and to going to this area right in here. So we have our hepatic portal vein that brings it to the liver metabolizes it, then we bring it to our hepatic vein, which then is going to dump that into our inferior vena cava, which will bring the good nutrients now to the heart so we can pump it through the pulmonary circuit and pick up the oxygen as well. Now looking over here, you can see the inferior mesenteric. So we had the superior mesenteric. I'm not worried about you knowing all its little tributaries, but basically all this little small intestine area breaking down your food is going to be delivered through the superior mesenteric. That superior mesenteric goes into our hepatic portal. Hepatic portal goes to the liver. Liver metabolizes it, comes back out through the hepatic veins to the inferior vena cava. Your stomach and spleen area, those are going to be taking the blood in here, going through that area you can see coming up and meeting up here. And then the inferior mesenteric, this is basically your colon that's going to be attached to this one, so that's your large intestine area. They're also going to be taking that blood upward to go to the hepatic portal. So all of these blood vessels are draining the digestive organs and taking the nutrients from them, putting them into the liver for the liver to detoxify as well as to metabolize for later, so we can go back into the heart for pulmonary circuit. The last specialized circulation we're going to look at is fetal circulation. So when we're looking at fetal circulation, we're looking at a fetus that is growing within a mother. And so within that mother, she has her own blood supply that needs to be kept separate from the fetus. Because remember, your blood type is genetic, which means you have information coming from mom and from dad, which are combining to give you your particular blood type. And so mom and baby's blood type may not match. So we need to have that distinctive divider between where the circulation for the fetus is going to be and the circulation for the mother. And that's where the placenta comes into play. So here is the placenta itself. This tissue is created by the fetus. So the fetus creates this tissue, and then you will have the umbilical cord that's the connecting piece between the baby and then to the placenta, which is then going to be attached to mom. The mom is going to have blood that's going to pool into cavities within the placenta, and then the nutrients from those cavities are then going to be absorbed across here. Now notice the umbilical cord itself. In the umbilical cord, you will have an umbilical vein and you have two umbilical arteries. Now we know that vein means it's going towards the heart, and arteries are going to be taking blood away from the heart. This is in relation to the fetal heart. So when we look at the fetal heart, we can see that the umbilical arteries are branching off from down here, and then they're meeting up in the umbilical cord. The umbilical vein, on the other hand, is showing here as red, and it's red going to the heart of the fetus. Now, the umbilical vein is going to be red because it's going to be highly oxygenated because it's getting the oxygen from mom. So every time mom is breathing in oxygen, she's getting oxygen for herself as well as for the fetus. Every time she's breathing out her carbon dioxide as well as fetal carbon dioxide. So both of those are going to be happening by way of the mom, which means if you're getting nutrient-rich and oxygen-rich blood from mom to go to the fetus, you really have no purpose for your respiratory system or your digestive system. So if we follow that umbilical vein, we notice the umbilical vein will enter through the umbilical cord, and then it's going to come up here and it's going to join within the liver itself. It is going to join into the ductus venosus within the liver. So the ductus venosus in the liver is going to deliver all of that oxygen-rich, nutrient-rich blood, but the liver itself doesn't need to do anything with it because it's already metabolized. It's already got nutrients in it. So it's going to bypass the liver to go directly into the inferior vena cava. And that's going to mix with the normal supply that's going into the inferior vena cava, which is why it's more purpley over here as opposed to red. So the unoxygenated with the oxygenated are combining here and then going into the heart. Now let's look at the heart. The heart is also going to have some different things on it. These are going to be so that you are bypassing the lungs because, again, the fetus is not breathing. So because the fetus is not breathing, the oxygen is supplied by the mother. The carbon dioxide is going to be disposed of by the mother. So when we look at the blood coming in, the oxygenated nutrient-rich blood, it can go in to the right ventricle and then get pumped out and then go to the lungs. But again, the lungs aren't doing anything. They're not adding any oxygen. So one of the first bypasses we have is this foramen ovale. The foramen ovale is going to be an opening between the right atrium directly to the left atrium. That oxygenated blood will flow into the left atrium and then go down to the left ventricle, and then it's going to get pumped out through the aorta. If you do have blood that's going down from the right atrium down to the right ventricle, and then it would normally come out through the pulmonary trunk right here, the pulmonary trunk has a little addition where it's going to connect directly in to where the aorta is. That's the ductus arteriosus. So here we have another way to bypass the lungs by dropping that oxygen-rich blood directly into the aorta, and then it's of course getting pumped out through the rest of the body. Now, these are great ways to bypass both the digestive system with the liver as well as bypassing the lungs because you don't need to pick up the oxygen there. Once the newborn comes out and starts breathing air, their lungs will expand. And as their lungs expand, that's going to change the pressure dynamics within the heart and within the chest wall. So the expansion of their lungs causes their pulmonary vessels to also expand, which reduces the resistance and allows us to have more pulmonary blood flow. The rising oxygen causes the constriction of the ductus arteriosus. We don't need the ductus arteriosus anymore. In fact, that would actually be detrimental. So the rise in oxygen levels will actually close that off. The pressure in your left atrium is going to cause it to close off that foramen ovale. So all these pressure increases and changes are going to basically close off these little things so that we can now rely on the pulmonary circuit to provide the oxygen because it's not going to be coming through the placenta anymore. And here's our getting old sucks slide. So as you can see, here is a young heart and blood vessels, and then we have an aged one over here. I am not going to make you know all these different things in here, but there are physiological changes that are going to be happening that are age-related. So for instance, you're going to have a decreased hematocrit. You're just going to produce fewer red blood cells. You're going to tend to have a constriction or blockage of your peripheral veins. You're going to have a reduced maximum cardiac output. The changes in the activity of your pacemaker and conducting cells, those are going to be reduced. You're going to have reduced elasticity of that muscle. You can have calcium deposits, lipid deposits, thrombus that are going to be created. So all of these different things are going to happen as you age. And then, of course, we're going to end with our system integration. System integration, we're going to look at all the systems that we have covered so far: integumentary, skeletal, muscular, nervous, endocrine, and cardiovascular. So we know, of course, cardiovascular is delivering all the different stuff that needs to come from the blood to the different systems. So that is definitely one way that it's going to be connected because it's transporting your gases, nutrients, hormones, metabolic waste. Your bloodstream is also regulating your pH and ion composition, fluid loss, defending the body against toxins. So all those things are going to be integrated within the cardiovascular. Now for the other systems, make sure that you are going through and seeing specifically what those systems are providing for the cardiovascular system in turn and being able to name them specifically. And that is the end of the cardiovascular system.